Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history, and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe, and share. Help build my channel, and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. Imagine this: you're the newly crowned king of 10 tribes of Israel. But there's one problem that keeps you awake at night, a problem so threatening that it will drive you to make a decision that will curse your kingdom for generations. Today we're exploring one of the most consequential decisions in ancient history, a story of fear, idolatry, and the catastrophic unraveling of a kingdom. This is the story of Jeroboam, the golden calves, and how one man's paranoia split the Hebrew nation forever. We're in the 10th century BCE. The magnificent kingdom of David and Solomon has just shattered. King Solomon's son Rehoboam made a catastrophic political miscalculation. When the northern tribes asked for lighter taxation, Rehoboam essentially said, "You think my father was tough? You ain't seen nothing yet." The result was immediate. 10 of the 12 tribes crowned their own king, Jeroboam, who had been living in exile in Egypt. Suddenly, the promised land was split, Israel in the north with 10 tribes, and Judah in the south with 2. But Jeroboam faced a problem that would challenge any leader. Jeroboam established his capital at Shechem and built up the city of Penuel. Things seemed promising, but then he started thinking about Jerusalem. Jerusalem wasn't just the capital of rival Judah, it was the spiritual center of all Hebrew people. It housed Solomon's temple, where God himself was said to dwell. According to Hebrew law, every adult male was supposed to make pilgrimages to Jerusalem for major religious festivals. Put yourself in Jeroboam's sandals. Several times a year, your subjects, your taxpayers, soldiers, supporters, travel south into enemy territory to worship. They see the grandeur of Solomon's temple, the wealth of Jerusalem, the stability of Rehoboam's court. Jeroboam became convinced this would be his downfall. He imagined his people in Jerusalem saying, "Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should have stayed with Rehoboam. Look at this temple. Maybe God really is with Judah, not us." The fear consumed him. He became convinced that if he didn't act, his people would eventually assassinate him and return to Judah. Jeroboam's solution seemed brilliant. If the problem was people traveling to Jerusalem to worship, he'd give them alternatives at home. But here's where Jeroboam made his fatal mistake. Instead of building alternative temples to the same God, he fundamentally changed the religion itself. Jeroboam commissioned 2 golden calves, large, impressive statues. He placed one in Bethel near his southern border, another in Dan at his northern frontier. These weren't decorations, they were meant to be physical representations of the God who brought Israel out of Egypt. Then came his sales pitch: "It's too much trouble for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold your gods, O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt." Think about that audacity. Jeroboam was rewriting his people's fundamental story. He was saying these golden calves, not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were the true source of Israel's liberation. Jeroboam didn't stop with golden calves. He instituted a complete religious revolution. First, he established high places, local shrines throughout his territory where people could sacrifice without going to Jerusalem. These were direct violations of centralized worship that Hebrew law demanded. Second, he revolutionized the priesthood. Instead of maintaining the traditional Levitical priesthood, descendants of Levi consecrated since Moses, Jeroboam appointed priests from common people. Anyone could become a priest. It was religious democratization, but also religious chaos. Third, he changed the religious calendar. The traditional feast was in the 7th month, but Jeroboam moved it to the 8th, a date which he had devised in his own heart. He was literally making up new holy days. The religious establishment struck back. A prophet from Judah traveled north to Bethel while Jeroboam was officiating at his new altar. The confrontation was dramatic and public. The prophet delivered a death sentence for the northern kingdom: "The Lord shall smite Israel, as a reed is shaken in the water, and he shall root up Israel out of this good land, which he gave to their fathers, and shall scatter them beyond the river." Notice the specificity. The prophet wasn't condemning all Hebrew people, just Israel, the northern kingdom, distinguishing it from Judah. It was Israel that would be scattered beyond the river, because of the sins of Jeroboam, who did sin, and who made Israel to sin. The curse took effect immediately. Jeroboam's dynasty lasted exactly 2 generations. His son Nadab became king but was assassinated within 2 years by Baasha from the tribe of Issachar. But here's the chilling part: Baasha didn't learn from Jeroboam's mistakes. The biblical text records that Baasha walked in the ways of Jeroboam, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin. The golden calves remained. The unauthorized priesthood continued. Jeroboam's religious revolution became institutionalized, passed down like a genetic disease. This story illustrates the divergent paths of the 2 Hebrew kingdoms. While northern Israel continued in what biblical authors considered apostasy, southern Judah maintained traditional worship in Jerusalem. Judah wasn't perfect, they later fell into Baalism. But they never adopted Jeroboam's innovations. They never worshipped at Bethel or Dan. They never accepted the golden calves. They continued worshipping in Jerusalem. The biblical text carefully distinguishes between all Israel, northern kingdom territory, and all Judah, southern kingdom. These weren't just political divisions, they were religious and cultural divisions. Jeroboam's innovations had consequences lasting centuries. Every subsequent northern king is evaluated by one standard: did he continue the way of Jeroboam, who made Israel to sin, or attempt reform? Almost all continued Jeroboam's way. The northern kingdom lasted about 200 years before the Assyrian Empire conquered it in 722 BCE. The 10 tribes were scattered and most disappeared from history, the famous lost tribes of Israel. Meanwhile, Judah lasted until 586 BCE when Babylon conquered it. But unlike the northern tribes, Judah maintained their identity during exile and eventually returned to rebuild Jerusalem. The story of Jeroboam and the golden calves is ultimately about fear corrupting judgment, and how expedient solutions often create larger problems. It's about political insecurity leading to religious compromise, and religious compromise becoming generational curse. Looking back at this pivotal moment, we see a kingdom with everything going for it: large population, fertile territory, strategic location, divine promise, but it threw everything away because one leader couldn't trust that doing right would lead to right outcomes. The golden calves of Bethel and Dan have turned to dust, but their story resonates. It reminds us that decisions made in moments of fear and insecurity often define not just our legacy, but everyone who comes after us. When Jeroboam looked at those 2 golden statues gleaming in the sunlight at Bethel and Dan, he probably felt proud of his political genius. He had solved his Jerusalem problem. His people could worship at home. His kingdom seemed secure. He had no idea he had just signed his nation's death warrant. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.